So, hello, Ina. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and why you wanted to come to this seminar?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ina, and I'm from Germany, the Ruhr-University in Bochum, and there I work at the Institute of Education. And I was very interested in coming to this conference because in my PhD work, I very intensively dealt with child domestic work, which, due to the nature of the work, domestic work, is actually located also strongly in feminist politics, which has been intensively discussed in the past 20 years, and that's why I was very happy to have the chance to talk about this topic of the child domestic work within feminist politics. And also what made me more happy was the name of this conference is and the childhood policies, to try to find more relations, topical relations to the topic of child rights, childhood studies, and the nature of childhood and the pluralism of childhoods in general. So I was happy for about the fact that this institute here in London tries to organize this kind of seminar.
Okay, and you gave a paper, and can you tell us a little bit more about this paper?
Yeah, as I just said, I did my research for my PhD on child domestic work in Nigeria, whereas there I more dealt with conditions of socialization and measures of intervention. And but here, as I said, I tried to reframe my analysis and my results to the questions of how far the issue of child domestic work is related with feminist policies and feminist theories, and that I tried to frame with the concept of housewifeization, which is in terms of child domestic work generationally transferred to the child and now infantilized, and children are now the exploited colony in a Nigerian society, coming to the topic of domestic work. And before was the woman, so domestic work is per se a feminist topic, and now it is a matter of child politics, child policies, and the necessity to regulate this topic of domestic work within the framework or the theoretical framing of feminist and child policies.
I was interested in what you said about, feminism, so the Western notion of female emancipation, which is sort of taken to this context, this particular context of child fostering. And I was wondering if it was, why would you define this as feminism, since it's an oppression, as you said, an oppression that is transferred onto somebody else. So, and I thought feminism was about, was against oppression.
Yeah, feminism, how it is practiced, the way it is practiced and the way it is lived in the Nigerian society. If you try to analyze it from a post-colonial perspective, and which tries to explore cultural changes, social-cultural changes, to me, it's just like a copied notion, not really negotiated in terms of how it can be integrated into a better way in Nigeria, and then and integrated into indigenous structures, in terms of solidarity and within the family, etc. That's why I just try to put it short without giving it a more comprehensive introduction. It's a copied pattern which is just coming with the entire wave of neoliberal capitalist mechanisms which is just bumped into the Nigerian society, and where the society, in particular the female part, the female adult part of the society, grabs the notion of I have to emancipate myself, and I want to have also this feminist thing they do in the Western world, without looking behind the facade. So it's just part of the entire package of capitalist way of exploiting laborers on the market, and now women think that that might emancipate them and put them into the center of the society like men, and put them on equal levels, but it doesn't. They're just part of the game, and another further marionette within the game, and which causes even the fact that they need somebody else to replace them in the household.
Yeah, because it's quite clear in your text, I think, that they do not deal with capitalism, and they do not deal with patriarchal oppression, in a sense.
Who does not deal with it?
The women.
Yeah, they don't reflect it. Women, yeah. No, they're part of the system, and in order for neoliberal capitalism to function, they need laborers which are set free from reproductive duties, and the patriarchal societies per se set part of societies free to be exploited in the system, which are men, while the woman stays at home because she gets babies and stuff, so she already does part of the job naturally. And without reflecting this part of the mechanism, women think as soon as they step into the labor market, they're emancipated and no more marginalized in the house and household.
And can you, at the end of your paper, you talk about children's rights, and in terms of personal or individual empowerment, or individual liberating themselves. I was wondering how this works when you have so many sort of power relations involved. I mean, how can a child really, domestic worker, a domestic worker really claim their rights when you have so many layers of power dynamics? Yeah.
In fact, for child domestic workers, it's in fact kind of impossible, because the work is behind closed doors, and who can just bump into a house and say, let me help to liberate you? Here, your rights, come and defend yourself and everything will be cool. Now, as soon as the door closes and that person is gone, actually the child is surely beaten up by the employer and will dare not try to emancipate him or herself again. That is why it has to be a multi-dimensional approach, which has to address different stakeholders in different parts of the society, started from the child domestic worker, the employer, but also politicians and so on and so forth, class teachers who also are actually are always actually very aware of how the child is, because they see it. Point one is they're regular latecomers. Point two, they see the body of the child and all these small details. So it has to be a multidimensional process, and driven, particularly driven by a very strong political will, which is definitely lacking in the Nigerian political system. Whereas I also think that it is a process which takes a long time, and as I already explained in the seminar, it is always it is very important to have the child domestic worker in the center and to know what the child domestic worker wants, whether it wants to stay in the job, whether it wants to change the job to sustain his or her living, or whether it wants to return back to the village. And even if it wants to return back to the village, find supporting structures for the child down there so that the child can continue the personal development it actually wanted to follow in the urban areas. So it is a very long and very complex process which needs a lot of effort.
Just ask you one last question about this, actually, the idea of personal development and how these children are being sent from the village or come from the village because they want an education and translated into they want a better life. You mentioned early on that that wasn't necessarily the case. In fact, they actually end up maybe in a worse of position.
Mm-hmm.
Can you comment on the idea of education as some sort of sacrificing yourself and putting yourself in that sort of position for an education?
Well, many children I spoke to definitely have better education in town than in the village, because the village school teaches in one language, only in the mother tongue, but to be competitive on the labor market, to use all these human capitalism terms, you need to speak English at least, and your mother tongue. So that is one improvement they noticed. They also noticed that they have a variety of textbooks they work with. So from this point of view, there is an improvement, though the state schools compared to the private schools are still in a worse condition. So as I went into private schools, I noticed the equipment they have there is by far on a higher level than the state schools, but yet these children who migrate to town feel that they have definitely improved and also definitely have better living circumstances due to the fact that they learn how to move in urban infrastructures, which they also feel as a personal improvement and of lifestyle, simply lifestyle, urban lifestyle compared to the rural village lifestyle. Yeah, so at least that are some aspects which they enjoy to experience, though they actually also feel kind of imprisoned in a cage, in a golden cage. Yeah.
So looking at this through the lens of what you said about the capitalist or colonialism and capitalist relations or colonialism, and the idea of school or education, do you think, maybe that's me thinking, that actually the whole language around education and social mobility is used to help capitalism in a sense? You have those children, you feed them a certain discourse, and they find themselves in this position which actually profit other people, because as you said earlier, there is this competitiveness, and you'll have public school and private schools, and maybe there's an improvement for them, but it's still less than the other kids from the family who go to private schools. Do you actually think that they will gain in the end, or do you think that this serves the interest of a bigger structure, of the bigger system, if you want?
Yes, directly and indirectly, yes, of course, because that is the case, and parallel studies on this topic has also shown it. For example, Edmute Albers and her team, another German anthropologist who researched on this, showed it very clearly with the example in Ghana, where on the cotton field laborers who, which was first organized by the whole family, blood children and fostered children, who equally participated in that job. And as soon as this job was more and more capitalized, the children, the blood-related children, the biological children went to school, and the foster children did the whole job. Similar things, and it is somehow similar in the case of Nigeria. And these children enable the woman, as I earlier said, to enter the capitalist labor economy, while these children do the reproductive work which has no value in the capitalist labor economy, no exchangeable value in money terms, but the work has to be definitely done. So they support the labor economy, and if it had been that these children were equipped in the end with tools to have a life, to put it in Zen, they have reasons to value very much like these women who enter the labor market, then there would be not much of a topic of lacking children's rights or rights which are ignored or violated. Then we would discuss more only the capitalist facets of it. But like that, there's a very strong critical aspect of completely ignored, neglected rights of children who are actually put in extremely dependent labor positions, or to put it in very extreme words, in slavery-like working positions, which doesn't make it a good relationship any longer. So that is why they serve more the capitalist labor system to exist more than they serve themselves to exist in a better future life.
And the last question is, out of the discussion today, what are the sort of emerging themes or the main themes, the main points do you think that have come out really?
Well, from my perspective, I need to sleep at night over all these things and to look at the papers again to be aware of more facets of the conference. But for me, it was very interesting to point one, again, think about relation and generation, which Lena Alanen put first. Then also what makes me laugh about myself, I don't like to use the word needs when I talk about childhood or child rights. But the point which was made by Rachel and Jan made me find out that there's a beautiful compromise to theoretically think about the point of needs, which they conceptualize as, or thinking of the concept of another scientist putting it as outlawed needs, and relating it to Marxist concepts of criticizing capitalist economy. So these were the two things I want to check up again, and also the point of consent. Who has the power to give consent, and why are interests of others ignored, and whose interests have actually got to be made heard and or are actually muted, completely muted interests in order not to give consent for their own will. So these were actually, each paper had his or her own very interesting, fascinating points to think about and talk about more and more and more. Yeah.